Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? And we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Today, if you haven't caught from the title, is going to be all about Emily is Away 3, or Emily is Away Less Than 3, or Emily is Away Heart, or whatever you want to call that game, because Kyle went ahead and made an emoticon part of his game's name, Kyle Seeley. But before we dive into that, a little bit of housekeeping for you. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. If you're on YouTube, ring the notification bell so you know when all of our newest videos are going live. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful monthly patron supporters do. So, as I said, kind of Emily is Away 3 Spoilercast. All three of us have played it. Cameron and Logan both had it kind of pre-release, but a game came out a couple days ago as of recording, and that gave me more than enough time to sit down and play it myself. We've had Cameron's got like videos of his Let's Plays going up on the site. You can go see his part 1 out there available now. Are you actually talking?
No,
Cameron?
I'm not actually talking
Okay.
to you. I'm mouthing to the audience who's watching.
Okay, because when you do that, it just sounds like it looks like your mic isn't working.
Yeah, no, that's. You remember sometimes when it's like I'm like hit the subscribe button and ring
Yeah.
that bell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fair.
one of those. I'm like it's in the sidebar. Like check out that playlist.
Yeah. So kind of the framework I had laid out for the show, we're going to do some spoiler-free impressions as well as just kind of our general history with the series first, and then we'll dive into spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, if you haven't played the game yet, we'll give you kind of like a clear delineation on when you can hop out. But let's kind of go around the table first. Cameron, what is your history with the series, with the Emily is Away games?
So my story with Emily is Away starts with I think a lot of people who kind of discovered this game through a very particular Let's Play done by one Greg Miller and Tim Geddes from Kind of Funny fame. The playthrough that they did was very much like hit me like it hit a lot of people right in the nostalgia like place where we keep in our gut where the nostalgia is right there. Bow, knocks the wind out of me. I immediately, it's a very inexpensive indie game, pick it up, play it, and fall just head first into the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Are
talking...
you talking the first game or the second game?
First
real
game.
Quick?
This is the
Okay.
first game.
Because
Because
the first game's free on Steam. Like that's.
Oh, is it free on?
I don't think he's ever charged for that one, but yeah, it's free.
I didn't remember if it was free or not, but regardless, I played it head first right into it, just absolutely lost myself in it. Spent days charting out, somewhere in my trunk over here I have the flow chart that I made of every single choice, and not just every single choice, but the timing of every single choice. How long did I wait? Did I leave it open a bit? Was time a matter of it? What combination of questions and answers would be the importance of that? And
so you fell super hard into Emily is Away too,
Yeah.
or Emily is Away.
Emily is Away, yeah. To the point where I realized that the only way to win Emily is Away is not to play. It is a narrative story that has only a single ending, and that ending is sorrow. And the lingering shell of what is pain.
Okay. And then presumably Emily is Away 2 came out and also broke your heart, or?
No, actually. So I was just super into the idea of playing. So something I did that was a lot of fun for me in Emily's Away is that when I played it in the mindset of my high school self, which is even more drastic now than it was when I was playing Emily's Away and Emily's Away 2. Like, I've since come out, and, like, you know, being open about, like, part of coming out and also having to, like, reconcile that with my past, and, like, where I was at in high school and the way that I acted in high school because of it has been, like, a process. That's for sure. But getting to step into the shoes of my high school self was a lot of fun for Emily's Away, and so I did that again with Emily's Away too. And so I didn't answer questions the way that at that time, this was like 3 or 4 years ago, you know, late 20s Cameron, who had been removed from high school for a decade, would have answered. I answered it the way that I know I would have answered it as a teenager at the time. And in doing so, I seriously connected with Evelyn. And despite some minor, like, differences, like, I like comedies, you like horror films, like, was able to, and, like, I don't necessarily like punk rock, but, like, it's cool and it's fun, but I'm more of an indie rock guy. I was able to not just have and, like, successfully have a relationship with Evelyn, but I was also able to establish, like, a really firm, good friendship with Emily, in the second game. And so I ended up walking out of that at that ending of that game with, like, a successful relationship with Evelyn, and on top of that, a very, like, reconnected friendship with Emily. And, like, I was like, wow, this is such a great ending. And then I immediately plowed through and went through every single possible... No, I'm joking. I didn't do that this time around. The chase was over for me at that point. But then I replayed it again and going through it as, like, my more modern self, and it was like I found myself more connecting with Emily, like, with what she wanted in life, and I was like, cool. So I ended up, like, playing through it I played it through several times, but, like, my honest high school playthrough was a successful run, and it's something that I really found appealing and appreciated. So, like, the first two games to me are standouts and are absolutely stellar. And as I tweeted out after the game launched on Friday, it's like Emily's Way 3 is not just nostalgia at this point. It's not just, you know, touching back on your memories. It truly, Kyle Seeley has truly become a master at combining nostalgia with a suspension of disbelief that lets you feel like you know these people. And it's far more effective in this game than it's ever been before. And that he has touched into, before we even realized that it was a thing at the time, the parasocial relationships that we have with people online, particularly with creators that we like, individuals, like internet celebrities. This parasocial science and mentality and study of that we are, like, looking at today, he's been able to tap into that as well as nostalgia and that suspension of disbelief to create a truly phenomenal universe in a video game. So, yeah, my experience with the Emily's Way series is stellar.
Cool. Logan, let's throw it over to you. What is your history with the games?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be, I think similar to Cam, but different kind of way of phrasing it. Yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed the series since Emily's Away, the original one as well. And I think I'm pretty sure I'm the youngest of the three of us here by like a year or two. And so it was funny kind of hearing Cam talk about how, like, you know, a decade removed, I think, when the second game came out from high school. For me, it's been a little bit close, right? So, like, the first game came out in 2015, which was the year I graduated college. And so that game in particular ends with you, like, leaving college. And so that one was kind of obviously the same wavelength, even though it still felt like a high school kind of era game. And then Emily's Way 2 kind of taking place when it takes place in my own life. To 3, like, you each kind of hit at, like, really interesting moments, I think, in my journey. I think the first Emily's Way game is a really special, like, bittersweet game. I've never gotten a quote unquote good ending in any of the 3 games, and I think I like that. Right? I think in 2 in particular, I think that game for me at least works really well if you get not a good again, whatever the quoted good ending is. If you two don't end up together, that I feel like is really effective. And again, playing it with Trevor again a week or so back, I still feel the same on that one. And then 3, we'll get to obviously the spoiler parts in a minute, but playing Emu's Way 3 for the first time, where like I am in a relationship for the first time while playing one of these games, and where I am obviously now older, right? Like I will have graduated high school 11 years ago next month now, right? Like I am at the end of my 20s. I'm 29 now. I am a bit older, right? Like I think charting that growth from each one, right? And charting, I think, Kyle's own growth as a game designer and a storyteller from Emily's Way 1 to 2 to 3, right? And it's been really fun watching along with Trevor's journey through all 3 of these games for the first time. Because I got a really good like rapid session like snapshot of each one of these games and how much they have grown, right? Like I think there's such a good seed at the heart of Emily's Way, like the first one, and then it really kind of begins to blossom into 2, and I think comes to what the best version of this kind of game can be with Emily's Way 3. And so I think, 6 years into this series, having got the chance to meet Kyle, talk to Kyle, and having got a chance to grow up, obviously, over those 6 years from, I guess 23 to now, has been a really, I think, interesting journey, and one that I'm excited to kind of come to the conclusion of now with this game.
Yeah, so for me, as you've kind of touched on, Logan, so this is a series I've been aware of for a while, and I've played it like PAXs and stuff over the years, but I didn't actually sit down and actually play through the games until very recently. Basically, you can see my Let's Plays for Emily is Away and Emily is Away 2 up on the site here in the last 2 weeks, basically in the lead up to Emily is Away 3. So I am certainly the newest to the game for everybody, but like I knew enough about the series to know that like, yeah, the first game doesn't have a quote happy ending, and then the second game does, but like it's, rarer to get and that kind of stuff. And really, like I loved playing at PAXs and like hitting those nostalgic vibes, but it was just one of those I don't play on PC enough to like have bothered to sit down and really like just put the time into them. Yeah. Even though they're like very short. I mean, the first game is like half an hour,
45
basically.
minutes. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then like the second one, like the full playthrough that I did with you, kind of tagging along, was less than 3 hours. So. And then this one certainly is like the longest of the bunch, but it's still like, you can complete it in a setting, no problem. So yeah, really enjoying like coming to the series after, having seen people talk about it and heard about it for so many years, and having, great conversations with people about the games and about, like meeting Kyle and having conversations with him and stuff. It's been really fun kind of just finally actually sitting down and enjoying it. And then enjoying like Emily is Away 3 in real time with everybody. So yeah, I'm glad to be on board now. Finally, I'm behind the times, but I've finally caught up. So yeah, spoiler-free impressions. We can kind of dive into that. I'll kick that off. I think both of you guys kind of touched on this a little bit. I think this is easily like the best of the series in terms of like it is a Kyle has very much. Finessed his writing and development skills over the course of the 3 games. And we get to see that, I think, fleshed out in the best possible ways, where even the bad endings of the game are still like incredibly satisfying and don't like leave you, maybe necessarily emotionally devastated as other games might be. But then because this game has a much more fleshed out cast of characters, there's just so much more going on within this entry. I think is fun, and it still does that thing that is tapping into nostalgia of the era, not only of like early Facebook in this case compared to the AIM games of the past, but like his, the deviations out into YouTube, and so suddenly we're listening to a whole bunch of songs from 2008. It's usually songs where I'm like, oh, I haven't thought about that song in years, and so it's always like a nice, fresh surprise, kind of going back into it. So yeah, I think that I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend. In terms of like spoiler-free impressions, I think it is a great cast of characters, and I think trying to like, so I mean, just to, for the sake of kind of like bringing this up, I think we all kind of played through like our initial playthrough. I went through and played through a second run last night, so I have like two drastically different experiences that I can speak to in this, and both of them I think were incredibly satisfying in very fun ways. But at the same time, in terms of like impressions, playing through the game a second time, it did kind of reveal some of the cracks, I guess, in that like, oh, there are some bits that are just going to play out the exact same way regardless of what choices you're making.
Yeah.
And I like in terms of like, even like, oh, I'm having the exact same conversation with Evelyn that I had with Emily the first time I played through, or something like that. I wish that there was more variation between the characters in that regard. I wish I wasn't just having copy paste moments like that.
Yeah.
But I understand that, like, hey, that'd be a whole lot more work to put into it. So, yeah. So Logan, what are your spoiler-free impressions of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Emily's Away 3 is a game that I kind of keep referring to as, this is the definitive edition of what an Emily's Away game could be, right? I had thought going into it that this would be a good, potential cap to this series of games, because who in the West doesn't love a good trilogy? And then playing it and getting to the end of the game, I feel even more kind of confident in that statement of, this is such a, I think, natural ending point for the series, right? I think, for me, obviously not getting the good ending for this third game now, but this one being, I think, far and away the most emotionally mature game. I think it being the most well-written game. I think it being really interesting. This is like, I guess, a slight, like whatever, but like it being interesting where this is the first game where the first person and the last person you talk to like aren't Emily or Evelyn, right? Like they're not like the love interest of the game, is a really interesting thing, right? That it is like a larger cast of characters that you are dealing with and interacting with. And just the way this game is paced, I think, and flows from one to the other is just so clearly kind of the fulfillment of the idea first started 6 years ago, right? And so for me, I really enjoyed my time with it. I really enjoyed the fact that this game is in a lot of ways a different kind of Emily's Away game, in really interesting ways that we'll get into obviously when we get to spoilers. But I think it gave me everything I could possibly want from an Emily's Away game, and it takes us up to a point in time now, obviously, where this game takes place from 2008 to 2009 in your senior year of high school, as I've talked to Trevor before about. My senior year of high school was 2009 to 2010, so it's basically with my own senior of high school. Like it lines up so much with so many of my own beats from senior year, and we're getting to the point now where an Emily's Away, theoretical Emily's Away 4 game that's like in 2011 or 2012 or these future years, I think those social media platforms don't work as well, and I think more to the point, it's beginning to be. It'd be things that aren't nostalgic for Kyle, right? And for people of like that generational era. And just getting to the end, I was like, this is how this should end. This is such a natural, I think, stopping point, such a natural fulfillment of that idea. And it's beautiful, I think. It's well written. I don't know what the correct word is. Not well acted, I guess, but the characters that are there are so real and so authentic, I think, to certainly my friend group back in high school, for better or worse, that I found it incredibly charming. And the last thing I'll say is that in terms of like a spoiler-free review, I think it is the most emotionally mature Emily's Away game, like I already kind of mentioned, but I also think it's the one that taps into your emotions the most effectively as well, right? Like, it's not just this is gonna make you sad or this is gonna make you this. Like, it makes you, like, I think, feel happy, and certainly from my playthrough, like, content and okay with its ending. And yeah, a little bummed out and sad, but I think it, for the first time, gives you an idea of, like, this is gonna be okay if you get, one of the quote unquote bad endings, in a way that the other two didn't, that I also found really refreshing and, again, kind of emotionally mature.
Yeah. All right, Cam, hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts.
My spoiler-free thoughts, nailed it. This game is an absolute treasure. It is an example of a masterclass in, as I mentioned earlier. I probably should have saved what I said earlier for now, so my apologies on that. I'm just really excited to talk about this game. It's something that I found myself kind of dreading to finish the first time playing through, because this very much feels like a conclusion to the trilogy.
Yeah.
And like Logan mentioned, having the opportunity to meet Kyle, talk with him, spend time with him, he's just an awesome, incredible guy, and I can't wait to see what he does next. But this feels like the ending to a very deeply emotional journey for me, on a very, like, meta perspective on this. But I have to say that it truly is just an absolute masterclass in taking something that is not just because anybody can throw something in from the past and call it nostalgia. Anybody can take and be like, well, there's a certain suspension of disbelief when you play video games, especially when you're trying to emulate, like, real people and real identities about these people. And then there is the entire, as I mentioned earlier, the parasocial effect that we're seeing a lot these days, in the last 10 years for sure, of this idea of people we don't know personally that we deeply connect with and create a pseudo relationship with when they're behind a screen. And for him to have been able to, and Emily Was Away 3 could pretty much be a thesis on this effect of tapping into all three of those to pull it together to make an absolute masterclass of a game where they're silhouettes of people. They're not real. But I will get into certain aspects in the spoiler section where I felt things. Mm-hmm. I feel things while playing this game.
I mean, for me, I'm constantly putting real life people into these avatars. Like, there are moments where I'm like, I knew someone with this exact scenario, and so yes, it's Emily or somebody else in the game, but I'm playing, like, I'm adding in all of that history that I have behind it. That's helping fully flesh out those characters.
I don't do that. These are people, like, and it's amazing the moment I'm like, oh yeah, like in the past games, like, these people have been here. When Matt says, like, yo, in the first message you get from somebody, I immediately go, yo. And I just fall into these relationships, and I can immediately know I've known Matt for years. He's one of my best buds. We for sure are on, like, the same wavelength when it comes to so much stuff. And even though, like, he's not my quote unquote best friend, he's still, like, such a close, good friend of mine. And what I found leading up to certain events in later chapters, I was shocked when it was like it didn't turn out the way that I thought it was. So that's going into spoiler territory, but I will say, like, these are individuals that I had, like, that existed in my mind, that didn't exist before in my life, but while playing through this game, I don't think I could live without. Like, my question, like, what's going on with what's going on with Matt today? Like, did we stay in touch? Did we like the lack of like a good time ending epilogue, so to speak, is like, sure, that would have been great in like a cathartic sense, but that's not what this game does.
Yeah.
So yeah, like my spoiler free, like I'll conclude my spoiler free thoughts by just saying like it just does it does what it needs to do so well that I don't know who else could do something like this without like a AAA dev team behind it. Like, this is the kind of stuff that like Kyle is able to replicate and improve upon the same feelings that you get for like old school BioWare games with their characters, and like feeling about like, oh, I care about this person so much, but he does it with so much less, and it's somehow so effective, and it's just he's so good at it. He is also an absolute sadist.
Very true. Real quick before we dive into spoiler stuff, I'm pretty sure like both of you basically played the game in a couple settings, right? Sittings. Like I think you both played like chapters 1 through 3, and then took a break, and then came back and did chapters 4 and 5, right?
No, I did chapters 1 and 2 in a single sitting.
Okay.
Did chapter 3 in its own sitting, and then did 4 and 5 in another sitting.
Okay.
I
And
did.
you, Logan?
I did 1 through 3 in one sit-in. Took a break. Went through your Emily's Way 2 Let's Play with you, and then the next morning finished 4 and 5.
Yeah. And I went through and played it in both iterations I've done. I did it all in like one go. So I wonder if like if as we're discussing, if that will like have changed any of our impressions or anything like that. But I imagine probably not. Because especially I think the settings for each of you guys were probably close enough that like, you know, you weren't like drastically forgetting, you know, key details or anything like that.
No, nothing like that. No.
Cool. Well, then let us go ahead and we will dive full on into spoiler territory here. So once again,
one thing
yeah,
I was just going to say real quick, I mean, I think it's a good tangent point too, is that unlike the two of you, I believe, I know for Trevor, I would assume for Cam as well, I've only played the game once, right? Per my tradition, I only ever play Emily's Away games one time through. That's my playthrough, and then I don't go back to them. Mm-hmm. But I only have one story that I will be discussing, obviously.
Sure. Yeah. I have only done my first playthrough. I have only started my second one yesterday. I was planning on playing through the entire thing, but just got caught up with doing other things. And so, like, I'm totally fine going into like spoilers on like other paths and stuff.
Oh yeah, I don't care. I'm just saying for when we get to other things, I just won't be able to have any sort of
That's totally fair, man.
Yep, and that's like especially because I've talked with Logan a little bit before we sat down to record this. I knew that Logan and I probably had followed a very similar path, so I wanted to basically completely break away from that and pick a lot of different choices. Basically try and play the game like in a completely different manner than I had originally to see what that perspective would look like as well, in particular for this spoiler cast. So, so diving full on into spoilers, once again, if you haven't played the game and spoilers are a thing that you care about, go play the game, pick it up. It's like $10 on Steam. Go support Kyle. He's awesome, and it's a real fun game. I think we all are in agreement there. So yeah, go check it out for yourself, and then come back here and reminisce on our successful or failed romances alongside us. But yeah, diving full on into spoiler land. Let's kind of talk about, I guess, probably the most spoilery thing we can touch on for each of us would be like, what endings did we get? So Logan, I will throw it to you first, even though I kind of already know your answer.
Yeah,
go ahead and let's share.
I alluded to it earlier too. So me and Emily in my Let's Play decide to go on a break. And we don't technically, it's like that thing, we're Ross and Rachel. We don't technically break up, I guess, but we decided to go on a break at the end of chapter 5 for, a variety of reasons. And I think a big part of this game, especially, I think Trevor Starkey's had a bad influence on me, only in positive ways though. But I think having had years of conversations with Trevor and just about a variety of things, and then playing Emily's Way 2 with him as well. I think this is the game, as I've kind of talked to Trevor about, where I got to the end of the game, me and Emily going to break, but it's the first time where, like, I don't have any regrets, right? Like, I wouldn't have changed anything I really did in my game. I wouldn't have done anything differently. I'd, like, everything I did is, like, I'm happy with that, and if we don't end up together, then, you know, or we're going to break, whatever you want to call it, like, it is what it is, but, like, there's not a decision I would have changed differently, right? I thought me and Emily had, like, a really, you know, honest, like, authentic, like, mature conversation with each other about, like, where we were each at, you know, where she was at and why she wanted to break, and me being like, you know, I, like, you know, I respect that, whatever. And then, as I'm sure we'll get on to in a minute after this, is that, like, my conversations with Matt afterwards, I thought were really insightful and, like, really beautiful in their own way as well.
Yeah.
But we went on a break, is how we.
Yeah. So as I've touched on with you, Logan, like, my path was basically heading down that same route where Emily comes to me in that last chapter and says, like, I think we should have a break, and I basically said, I don't know what a break's going to do for us, so I basically just said I think we should just break up. And so my initial ending was Emily and I break up, but then I still had that, you know, great conversation with Matt that comes after the fact, and it was I think one of the really cool things about this game was if you know, when my eventual kind of Let's Plays of the game come out, because I recorded my own that I'm sure we'll release once Cam's batch are done. But basically, I talk throughout. I'm constantly, like, looking at the camera and saying, "How you gonna fuck me, Kyle? How you gonna fuck me on this?" Because I
His name is Jeff.
Especially, I mean, yeah, but especially playing through having, you know, just played through Emily is Away 2, where, you know, it, like, the end of that game is like this whole, like, gotcha thing where, you know, you said something to one person that you said something else to another person, and that's what fucks you. I was constantly, like, wary of, like, moments where I was like, you're not even giving me a choice to, like, make the same kinds of, like, decisions here. And so it wasn't until, I think, going into that final chapter where I was like, oh, I don't think it's going to be a gotcha thing. I think it's just going to be that, you know, we've grown apart just like Kelly and Matt did, you know, earlier in the game. Like, Kyle does a great thing of setting up that, you know, type of a relationship. And it's like, that's just going to be the natural, you know, endpoint for you and Emily as well. And so, like, I found myself really appreciating that it wasn't like, oh, I did something wrong or whatever. It was just, yeah, we're, you know, different people, because, you know, it's very rare, and it's way more realistic that it's very rare that, you know, a high school couple is going to, you know, last into a wildly different college setting and all that kind of stuff anyway. So I really appreciate that. But then I will say, playing through a second time with Evelyn, I got a quote unquote happy ending with Evelyn. Like, Evelyn and I ended up together. And I still, like, ended up good friends with her. Like, my ending with Evelyn, like, the breakdown screen you get at the end of, like, here are the choices you made and how many other people. Me and 0.2% of people got the, like, happily ever after with Evelyn. And we'll dive into some of the other choices that kind of, I think, you know, helped lead up to that versus the path with Emily. But yeah, so those are kind of like my two endings right now is you know, I made the choice to break up after she was like, hey, we should take a break. And then with Evelyn, we end up together and, you know, ride off into the sunset together. How about you, Cam?
So for my first, like, I'm still in the middle of my second playthrough, but on my first playthrough, I like, high school me, 100% bonfire all the way, every day. Like, every chance I got in high school, I was at a bonfire. Gosh, yeah, no, I loved it. So, like, I went through and I played it as Emily, with Emily. I was her boyfriend, and things were great. Things led up to, it's like, you know, it gets to the point where, like, you meet a guy, like, a guy comes into the picture, and his name is Jeff.
It's Jeff if it's Emily. It's Steve if it's Evelyn. just as a heads up. But yeah,
for sure,
same premise. Like, this other guy starts, you know, seemingly invading.
Steve is her is Evelyn's ex-boyfriend.
Travis is Evelyn's.
Oh,
ex-boyfriend.
Travis. So it's not Travis. It's Steve this time around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different
Interesting.
person.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm excited to meet with catch up with that. Then that's gonna be fun. It was like I was both Emily and I were like, yeah, no, friends are super important. Like, 100% agree with that. And she's like, cool. This is my friend Jeff. And it's like, cool, yeah. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm sure Jeff is fine. And then he sends me his friend request. And this motherfucker, all right, this motherfucker. Hey, any friend of Emily's is a friend of mine. I stay in your lane, all right? Stay in your lane. Boyfriend. All right? I'm not her friend. First off, I'm her best friend, and second off, I'm her boyfriend. So like lines are in place, buddy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know about this. And then before that, you have the opportunity to talk with Matt about like, yo, like, maybe you should say something to him and, like, talk to him pretending to be me. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
No.
Let's
not
dive
do
in
that.
on that. Well,
Let's
real
not
quick.
do
Hit me with your ending.
What was your ending? Yeah.
Yeah, hit me with your ending, and then because I definitely want to go
my
back
ending-
to the
We're gonna
whole
talk
like
about that moment for sure.
logging in
yeah.
as Matt
Let's
thing.
definitely. Oh my gosh, that's such a. I have no idea what that moment's like because I've never chosen it. But I will say that we got to the point where we're at the end, and like you'll see like a bit of a spoiler. You'll see it in my playthrough at the very end where she says, let's like that ending conversation with Emily is super emotional. For me on my end of things, it was like it sounds like Logan, you had like a mature like logical conversation about like like if this is where you're at, let's go on a break. For me, it was like what are you like? She kept on saying like, I just don't know, and it's like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, Emily, I know you. You know what you want. Tell me.
I'm envisioning you guys both had the same conversation, but you're taking very different things from this conversation.
Yes, that's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of this game. One of the many beautiful things about it. But I'm like, Emily, you know what you want. Tell me what you're trying to say. You are footsying around it. You are trying to you're trying to hem and haw it. Stop. Tell me what you like. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how you feel. What's happening? And then she's like, I just think that we should be more like Matt and this girl and
Anna.
You should be like Matt and Anna. They have a good thing. Like college. I'm like, first off, our colleges are not that far away. This is not a long distance relationship. Be honest. Don't stop screwing around. Be honest about what you want. You don't want strings attached. I'm like, okay, so are you wanting to date other people? She goes, no, I'm not. And I'm like, and then keep talking. And then I say, wait, so like, are you going to be seeing other people? And she goes, well, yeah, isn't that what a break's about? It's like, Emily, like.
So did you in this conversation, did you say to her like, is this about Jeff?
I did,
that's,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure one of the okay.
I said, I brought up, I'm like, is Jeff, because I've been talking to some friends, and it's like, okay, which friends, Emily? Because you definitely weren't talking to me.
I definitely want to talk after Cam.
Yeah, yep. You weren't talking to me. You didn't talk to Matt about it. Or I would assume Matt would have, given me a heads up about something. Or probably would have told you to talk to me about it first before anything else. Because Matt's my boy. Emily, you... is Jeff a part of this conversation? And I'm like, she was, well, it was mostly talking to Jeff. And I was like, Emily, does Jeff have feelings for you? Yes. Okay. Okay. My concerns are now justified. I never let my concerns bubble into anger and jealousy. I kept a cool head.
I mean, you clearly did based on how you're reacting right here, but okay.
Well, because now I know that my paranoia, as somebody who was deeply paranoid in high school about a lot of things, mainly about whether or not somebody would ever figure out that I wasn't straight. Being paranoid in high school, having that paranoia justified in such a manner. And I was like, do you have feelings for Jeff? And she goes, no, he's just a friend. And I said, okay. Like, I don't think I didn't, like, I'm like, I don't, like, I'm not going to be like, you cheated on me. I don't think she cheated on me. I trust Emily implicitly that she was honest about where she was at in our relationship at the time. But now Jeff has sowed the seeds of discontent in our relationship, and he has taken all the minor things, the little things, and helped her magnify it. And now she realizes she was, well, I care about you, I still love you. And it's like, that's fine, but like, and then she's like, well, can we do this? Can we go on a break? And I'm like, I don't think I can do that. Like, this is not something that I feel like I can do. You, like, if this is what, like, if you don't want to be in a relationship with me, don't be in a relationship with me. And finally we got to the point where she goes, like, so, like, we're breaking up. And I was like, yeah, we're breaking up. Like, you, like, and she goes, you know, I just, you know, she goes about her thing about how she does this thing where she, like, she doesn't play the victim, but she does this, like, plays into platitudes. Emily does this thing where she plays into platitudes to, like, make things come off not as in, like, as her, like, this, you're deciding to break up, and it's like, no, like, Emily, you decided to break up, but you wanted me to still be around, and she's like, can we still be friends? And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. Like, this hurts. Like, I love you, and you don't want to be with me, and like I'm not. And then, like, I'm like, what you want is not what, like, I can do. And then afterwards talking with Matt, and I'm like, this is what Emily said she wanted. And Matt's like, that's not what me and Anna have. Like, that is not the case, man. She knows that, too. And I was like, yeah, that's why it's, like, over, man. And
so you also basically made the call to break up.
Yeah, I made the call to break up because, like,
okay.
People who say they want to break and they want to date other people while on a break, that's not a break, that's a breakup.
I think for me, at least, because so in that case, it sounds like me and Cameron had all three of us had very similar first.
We basically all had the same first playthrough, except Cam and I, like, did the breakup option, and you just kind of accepted the break.
I was like, and so I think for me, it was, and it's really interesting hearing the decisions Cam took was, so, like, I never asked about Jeff. Like, that was an option. The game very deliberately, I think, steers in the direction of, like, what is Jeff exactly? And I, you know, from the jump, I had been of the mindset of, like, I'm going to trust Emily, right? Like, if she says anything differently, then we'll get to that point, I guess. But, like, you know, when Matt in, like, chapter, like, 3 or 4, whatever it is like, oh, like, it was kind of frisky kind of thing. And I was just like, I mean, I trust her. I had a conversation with her. She was, you know, she didn't have anything about that. And like, I trust that, right? So when we got to chapter 5 and it had the option, like, is this about Jeff? I was like, I don't, like, for me, that is, at least for me and where I was at in my playthrough and where I'm at now as a 29-year-old person, I was like, that is sort of irrelevant, right? Like, to me, it didn't really matter, right? Like, at least in my head canon of my playthrough, right? Like, me and Emily didn't break up or go on, what do you want to call it? We broke up, basically. But, like, we didn't, you know, go on, that didn't happen because of Jeff. It happened because we, you know, grew apart for a variety of reasons. And, like, was Jeff in here, you know, saying shit? Maybe, but, like, I both don't know and I didn't need to know, right? Like, why she got to that point in terms of, like, who around her was saying it was sort of irrelevant to me. It was more the fact that she was there. I was like, oh, okay, like, this is surprising to hear, but, like, let's have this conversation. Let's go through this and be like, if this is how you're feeling, then yeah, like, let's discuss this. Obviously, like, I think the only thing I said was like, hey, and I wish you had said it to me earlier, really. But, like, I get why you wouldn't. And then, you know, when we got to that point, it's like, yeah, like, you know, do we care about each other chill? Like, yeah, I think so. Like, I think most high school couples probably do when they get to the breakup. But I also think that, you know, I don't theoretically know if, you know, Emily and my character got back together and, like, 2 months later after going on a break, or if they never got back together, anything in between. But I think in that moment in time, it was one where I was never going to be, and Trevor's playthrough of Emily's Way 2 is so important to me, where it's like, I was never going to be Emily's, like, ex in Emily's Way 2. And I can't remember his name, but, like, that guy who, like...
It's Jeff, actually.
Yeah, who, like, screamed and shouted and who was like, oh, like, you know, how could you believe me? Like, I'll just, you know, my life can't go on without you kind of thing. I was like, that's not who I have any desire to be. And me and Trevor ragged on the guy because he sucked in Emily's Way 2. And then I was like, I don't want to... And, like,
always
that's
sucks.
Yeah, and it's like, that's not who I am, right? And so, like, even Jeff in this one, when he sent me, like, the friend request of, like, oh, like, any friend of Emily's a friend of mine, I was like, that's super, like, all right, but, like, I'm
ultra
gonna be
passive-aggressive?
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna be the bigger man and be like, whatever, yeah, like, I'll accept the friend request, like, I hope, and, like, my whole thing is, like, I would love the game to end and everyone's just friends, like, we're all just able to, like, hang out with each other, like, mature people, right? And, like, that's what I was, like, kind of aiming for, and then, you know, that didn't happen, but I think for me, so much of it was to pivot on to, like, the second big spoiler thing for me, I guess, which is sort of the epilogue in my eyes, is those conversations with Matt, and then for me, Evelyn afterwards, right? And, like, Matt giving me the whole thing, right, of, you know, Matt being like, oh, shit, like, that's, you know, I'm surprised to hear that you guys were so solid, like, it's kind of what happened with me and Kelly, and then me just walking through and him being like, did you call her out on this or this or this? And I was like, no, because, like, I had no desire to be that, right? And, like, the big box quote for me that, you know, I've talked to Trevor about was, like, Matt dropped the line of, like, and I pulled it up so I wouldn't forget it, like, you chose to trust Emily and have faith in your relationship. That means something. Maybe she doesn't deserve you, right? Like, one of the things I really think is really interesting about Emily's Way 3 is that I think it's the first time where the series really asks you, like, what makes Emily so great, right? Like, what makes Emily worth chasing after for 3 games, right? Like, in the first game, it's just like, oh, like, I want to be with her. The second game, I want to be with her, right? And the third game, I think, is really interesting because
you're with her.
It's really the first time where, like, you're in a relationship, right? Like, for the vast majority of this game, you are a couple with either Emily or Evelyn, I would imagine, right? From, like, chapter 2 onwards. And so navigating that and navigating, like, all right, you've gotten the girl, right, quote unquote, like, what is the happily ever after of the other 2 games look like now? And this is the relationship, and this is what it is. And Jeff being like, yeah, like, you know, sometimes, like, maybe they just kind of suck a little bit, right? Like, maybe it is that simple of, like, yeah, like, you two of you shouldn't be together, right? For whatever reason, right? And, like, you're not on the same page, and sometimes, like, you kind of have to be, like, because, like, for me, it's that thing, like, I'm really curious to hear Trevor's playthrough, like, how he and Evelyn ended up together, and, like, how that played out, obviously, and, like, what would have been different from mine or his from the first one. But for me, at least, like, I wouldn't have wanted to be with Emily if I had to, like, be, like, a super aggressive, like, dickhead in, like, the chapter like 3 and 4 and be like, you can't hang out with Jeff, like, I forbid that, all of that. And I was like, that's not who I'm gonna be. Like, if she wants to break up and she's allowed to see who she wants to see, and she gets to that point in chapter 5 and it's like, I don't want to be with you anymore, it's like, you know, okay, but, like, I'm not gonna be like some, you know, Hulk Hogan-esque man and be like, you're mine, you have to be only hanging out with me. It's like,
yeah, no, that was
like, that's not what we're gonna do. And yeah, like, I trusted Emily, I had faith in Emily, and in my eyes, you know, she didn't do anything wrong, she just grew apart, and that sucks. And like, maybe Emily's not that, here's the thing, like, I think the game should mention, like, maybe Emily's not that great to begin with, right? Like, maybe like, it's like, maybe there are better people than Emily after 3 games, you know what I mean? Like, and then, like, its epilogue with Matt and Evelyn, I think, are really interesting in that way, where it's like, and also, you're going to be okay, right? Like, it's the first time where the game, where, like, any one of the games is like, hey, it's okay, though, right? Like, the first game ends, and it's like, that fucking sucked, and it's just you broken up. The second game ends if it gets bad, and it's like, wow, that fucking sucked, that didn't go great. And this one, like, okay, cool, we're on a break, we're broken up, whatever, and then you have other conversations that, like, put that in perspective, right? And I think give you context, and for me at least, I went to, like, barbecue with Evelyn and Matt and, like, the rest of the gang and had a good time, right, presumably. And
hung out with Kelly.
It shows you,
Evelyn,
and it shows you, like, oh, there's a future beyond this relationship. Like, their whole world isn't just consumed by this, right? There are other people, there are other relationships, and life moves on.
If you keep your friendship up with Matt, then, like, he's there for you. And
not even Matt, like, Evelyn reached out, like, out of nowhere, like, hey, like, you want to come here? Like, I think it's just it was a really nice ending to be like, your life is more than this one relationship in senior year of high school.
Especially,
I thought it was really beautiful.
As we touched on it a little bit, like, and I'm pretty sure, I imagine this was the case for all of us, but, like, Evelyn in the Emily playthrough, like the last time you talked to her is chapter 2, and then
Yeah, she
like
vanishes,
your
yeah.
your world is Emily for chapters 3, 4, and 5, and so like Evelyn like popping back up at the end and inviting you to that party. And on the flip side, it'll be Emily. It's the same with Emily, inviting you to the party if you're with Evelyn. But it was definitely an interesting dynamic. There was something you were kind of touching on there is I appreciate that like Kyle is almost like subverting expectations based on if you've played the other games, because immediately when, and this will happen if you pursue Emily or Evelyn, both of them will basically say like, no goodbyes. We don't say goodbye. I hate goodbyes. It's a pet peeve. Blah blah blah. Goodbye is bad. And immediately, if you've played the other games, you can probably like your head will jump to the end of the game where you're having a conversation, and it does the thing that Kyle has done in the past, where it's like, one option will be goodbye, but then you have like a couple options that are trying to save the conversation, but then it turns into like 2 options are goodbye, and then eventually like you have no choice but to say goodbye. And I appreciate that this game didn't do that. Like in neither of my playthroughs did it turn into that like, well, this is going to end with a goodbye somewhere along the line. You can always say goodbye, and I never like
I said goodbye to Emily.
Yeah, I said goodbye to Emily, but only because Emily had said goodbye first.
Yeah.
But like I never said goodbye to Evelyn, for example. But you like every time you part
was
with them, you have the
deuces.
option to say bye or something else. And I just never did. So yeah, going to my Evelyn playthrough, it's interesting because the Evelyn playthrough, so Steve is the the other guy in the
Yeah.
Evelyn playthrough instead of Jeff, and I made a lot of like major choices to be different in the going from Emily to Evelyn because I had seen what didn't work in the Emily playthrough. So the biggest one that we'll dive a little bit deeper into is that I did kind of confront him when you log in as Matt. And I basically pretended to be Matt and said like,
How did
"Yo,
that go?
What's the deal?" Yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit. But the other thing is like when I got out of that and was talking to Evelyn again, I at least brought up Jeff as like I confronted
You mean
and
Steve?
said like I planted the seed that like, hey, I think he has feeling, like I think he's interested in you, like yeah, like and she, when you have confronted him, she calls you out and it's like did you have Matt talk to Steve? Like, what the fuck? And you're given the option, like, actually, that was me, or you can do what I did and say, like, yeah, I asked him to, like, find some things out, basically. But the biggest difference then,
in a way, you did.
So I imagine, because it sounds like we all had pretty much the same, core playthrough in our Emily run, and so in chapter 5, like the thing starts off and like Jeff is posting pictures and stuff, and because you're now friends, you can see them, and like there's like photo booth shots of Jeff and Emily.
Yep.
And the key difference that like caught my attention when I went into 5 with Evelyn is that he still took those pictures, but it was me and Evelyn, and he wasn't in them. And in the playthrough, like he's doing the exact same things that Jeff is doing of like trying to kind of like maybe horn in on that or whatever. And she basically says, "Oh God," like she is annoyed by him. So I don't know if like me planting the seed had basically like opened her eyes to what he was trying to do, and that he was trying to pursue her while she had a boyfriend. But by like chapter 5 in my version, yeah, she's like, I'm just gonna ignore him and hope he goes away, because I don't want to, like, I hoped that I could help him through the things that he was, working through, but he didn't, but I did, and he's still, not independent or whatever, like, so he's still clingy and all that stuff, so, like, I'm just gonna, pass on that. So we ended up, like, staying together and happy together and that kind of stuff. And as a result, there was no, like, come down scene with Matt that we all had in the Emily run. It was just kind of like a happily ever after with Evelyn, and then Emily invites us to the party, and we all go and hang out at the beach together, basically as a big old group. So yeah, those were like some of the big key differences. But yeah, let's circle back to what I was easily the most uncomfortable with, like, especially my first time through, was the, like, hey, I know, you should log in as me and creep on this guy's profile. Where Matt basically
100%.
gives us a lot. Like, I didn't want to do it. I was like,
Neither
nope,
did
I'm just gonna relog in as myself. But it did that thing where like it's going to autofill the things you're typing, so it logs you in as Matt. Because that was just like the most
only bad
thing.
things can come from this. Yeah,
Yep,
right.
This is I'm like,
But
we are breaching trust at this point. I do not feel comfortable with it.
It was this element that I had like completely forgotten about of those early days of Facebook, of like, you couldn't see what people were posting if you guys weren't connected, if you weren't friends or whatever.
Yeah.
So people that you like knew could be having these like entire conversations behind your back and stuff like that. And it was such a weird, like, out in the open but like hidden kind of conversation thing. And like I'm fairly certain I did this kind of stuff where like I would be at a friend's house or something and like we'd be logged in on their thing to see what other conversations were happening that I couldn't have seen otherwise, or something like that. Like, I don't think I ever did it like this maliciously, but it's also friggin' 15 years ago. I wouldn't be surprised if I did. Like, I was a dumbass in college.
Yeah.
So like it's entirely possible I did.
I
There were also things like there were status updates that came up and I was like, oh my God, I cringe because I did that exact same thing. Like one of the ones in the final chapter there with Steve, where Steve has clearly not gotten the girl, but presumably like tried to get Evelyn. He had a status that was basically like, well, it's not my weekend, but it's going to be my year. And like I looked at that and I was like, oh my God, I made that exact same status update like when I, asked a girl out and she said no or stuff like that. And I was just like, I hate so much of this. But yeah, so chapter
Steve's
4.
is the worst. Not Steve, sorry. Friggin' Jeff's is the worst. Because like, looks like he got his swagger back. And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, you motherfucker.
And that's like, that's another one of those things. I'm sure if Steve had, gotten Evelyn, he would have had that same update. But yeah, so when Matt has us log in and we're creeping on Jeff's profile, like what was that like for you guys? Cam, I'll throw it to you first.
Incredibly uncomfortable. Felt like a violation of privacy. And yet it is something that I know, like, for sure, like it's like, oh, hey, this person I think is cool is posting on this. I don't know who this other person is. I look at it and I'm like, oh, they're friends with this person. And I hit up that person that I know who's friends with them and be like, hey, yo, like, what's going on over this? And they'd be like, let me send you some screenshots, which is why I told Matt, send me screenshots. Don't do that.
Yeah.
And I just like that's what I did. And I tried to do that way and it didn't work out. So I had to log into his profile and then he was like, oh, hey, Jeff just signed in. You should talk to him. No.
Yeah. If you say yes, which I did in the Evelyn playthrough, he's basically like, oh man, I was just kidding, but okay. I guess tell me how it goes.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Matt, of course,
he
Matt was
definitely
kidding.
like backpedals pretty quickly.
Yeah,
on that.
Matt comes up with crazy, wild ideas, and then as a joke, and then when you decide to go through with them, he's like, "Oh shoot, I did not expect this," and it's like, "You should have, dude. We all, like, both of us know that her boyfriend's a vegetarian, or her boyfriend has beef with me, but I don't care because I'm a vegetarian."
No, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was not
for
worth it,
me,
I was like, I don't remember the line correctly. This is botched.
Yeah.
I botched it. I botched that hard.
Yeah.
I'm on my face.
I think for me, I obviously, I also just like, this seems like a bad idea, Matt. Like,
Yep,
it's like,
it's a bad idea.
I was like, just send me screenshots, and he's like, nah, this would be better. And I was like, all right, and like very begrudgingly, like logged out. And it was funny for me when I logged out, and I was like, should I have written down what his password? I was like, oh fuck, I don't know his password. And I was like, oh god. And
I didn't even remember his username, so I was like, I guess my only thing is to log back in as myself, and then it like started autofilling the thing. I was like, oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, so I said, I also instead of typing in my name was like Lefty Logan, and then they like put in his, and I was like, oh great, because I did not have that written down.
The password is HO3 3-0 forever.
303
Yeah.
forever. Yeah.
And so I like hopping in and like looking at it. I'm like, that's the thing. Like looking at stuff, I was like, it all looks pretty like chill. Like it looks like Jeff probably likes Emily, but like she's been like she's sharing like a place. Like it's pretty tame. And I was like, all right, this is all fine. And so and like that's my thing is like I don't think they cheated or anything. I think it was all pretty tame.
Yep.
And so when
Yep.
and like I had no reason to think differently. And so whenever he was like, you should go talk to Jeff for like 1 second. Is like, should I? And then I was like, no, that seems like a terrible idea. Actually, like there's like only bad things. I'll probably somehow manage to get like found out, and then it's just like not like this all seems like a terrible idea. So I didn't, and I backed out. I'm just like, nope, I didn't do that. And I talked to Evelyn. I talked to Emily, and again was like, hey, like, you know, what is your dynamic with Jeff? Because it kind of forced me to do that. And so like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna have this conversation. And she was like, oh, he's just like a friend. He's like going through shit. And so whenever she was like, he's going through shit, I'm trying to help him out and like be a good friend. I was like, I believe you. Like I have no reason to think differently. If something else happened, that's fine. But like my whole thing from the jump was like, I'm gonna trust her. I'm gonna believe in her. I have no reason to doubt her thing. And so yeah, when it gets to chapter 5, and it was like I saw them in the photo booth, I was like, that's not great, obviously, but it also was like, yo, you know, you and Emily are doing fine. Like you and Emily are doing great, and like you and Matt are still bros too. And I was like, great, wonderful, fine. Let's hop on in and have a happily ever after. And it didn't happen, but I was like, again, that's my thing. It's not like I'm really curious for your sake, Trevor. Like, out of those two playthroughs you've done on those two endings, right? Like one of them has a happy ending, but like if you had to do one of those, which one would you have done? Like which one would you have been? Which one are you more okay with having gone through, I guess?
Oh, I mean, like my original playthrough with Emily was more like this is how I would normally treat things, and that's and in particular and I touch on this like in my eventual videos, but and what I alluded to earlier is like when I'm putting my own historical context into these things, and I've talked with Logan about this, but my relationship with Kat, who was my partner, you know, a number of years ago, like we were good. But then she had like her own Jeff that kind of like came into the picture, and they worked together, and they were like they started becoming really close. And like I got the vibe that he was definitely interested in her, but I was like, but like she's with me, I don't think she's gonna like step out on me or anything like that. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not concerned. So when she like ultimately like broke up with me in a more blindsidey kind of fashion, and then a month later she's dating her quote unquote Jeff, and they're now married. I'm like, okay, well, clearly something had happened there. And I don't know if it happened like while we were together or like they like, I don't know what happened, but that's what's playing through my head when I'm having this interaction with Emily and Jeff. And so like, I still did what I did back then of like, I wanted to be the bigger man and, you know, not, you know, assume the worst or anything like that. Like Matt says, you know, I put the faith in the relationship. I trusted her. I wanted that to, you know, be what it was. Mm-hmm. So on the flip side, then, like being, like talking to him as Matt, talking to Steve as Matt, was like it gives you the option kind of up front of like you can basically continue, you can pretend you're Matt, or you can basically come clean and be like, no, it's actually Trevor. I want to talk. And I did not do that option. I was like, I pretend to be Matt. I did the whole thing. And it was basically like, it started out like non-hostile in that it was kind of asking and just being like, so like, what's going on with like, what's your, like, do you have feelings for Evelyn? What's going on there? Cause I see kind of the post that you're making and it seems a little flirty, man. And he's got, you know, she's got a boyfriend kind of thing. And he like he quickly gets like hostile back in a way that leads the conversation down to like ultimately as Matt, I basically said, just like back the fuck off, man, or whatever. and he signs off with a heart. Like Steve signed off with a heart as like, all right, man, whatever. Like he basically like dismisses everything and just is like, haha, heart. And I was like, oh, fuck this guy. Absolutely fuck this guy. So then when I get back in and talking to Evelyn as myself, and kind of like broach the question. I'm not using the illicit information that I got, which ultimately, one of the things I'm thinking about as we're kind of talking about this is, yes, I have the quote happy ending with Evelyn, but it is an ending that has like a pretty glaring lie at its root, at its like cornerstone that never gets reconciled, versus, you know, the ending with Emily that like I came clean, or I was, you know, I can live with myself better in that route. Like, it's the kind of thing that like, oh yeah, with Evelyn, sometime down the line, maybe we can like have this fun little joke about it. And the fact that like she's already kind of like dismissing him makes me think that like she'd be cool with it, you know, if we joke about it 6 months from now or whatever. But yeah, like ultimately, it was more of a, hey, just like heads up, like he clearly seems into you. And again, like she was like, that's not what it is. And I was like, okay. I mean, like, again, I trust you. Same kind of stuff with Emily. It was a little bit more like addressing it head on, I guess. And then there was another, and I don't know how much of a factor this played into it, but in the Evelyn run, as soon as he pops up and kind of and starts like writing on her wall and stuff, I immediately sent him the friend request, like in chapter 3 or something like that. So
I
then,
thought about it, yeah.
So then when Matt is like, hey, so what, like, oh, you can't see these things, and well, are you friends? My response wasn't, no, it looks like we're not friends or anything like that. It was, yeah, he hasn't responded to my friend request. So like, so then when Steve, like, the chapter still ends with Steve sending me that same like, any friend of Evelyn's is a friend of mine kind of thing.
Fuckers.
He is responding to the friend request that I had already sent him. Like, I had tried to be like, I effectively in my mind, I had tried the same thing of like, hey, you're Evelyn's friend. She likes you, so like I think we should be friends. Was like the, you know, the prompt in my head or whatever. But since we didn't get to write a message out when we sent out friend requests or whatever, but yeah, so that was another little, exactly. He like, yeah, because I sent that friend request back in like chapter 3 or whatever, and it took him until the end of chapter 4 to send it. Yeah. So yeah, those were some of the, I think, the like the little key details. And then I think one of the other, like, I'll be curious when we eventually sit down and talk with Kyle about the game. One of the key things I think I did with Evelyn that I didn't do with Emily, like with Emily, like I think like I was telling her I love her like early on or something like that. And with Evelyn, I didn't shy away, but I prolonged the like saying I love you bit. And so actually I don't think the I love yous came out until we were having this little spat about Steve. Like ultimately she was like, I love you, Trevor. Like, why are you doing this? And I said, like, I said, I love you too. And that was the first time in that playthrough that we had said the I love yous. And so there's part of me that wonders if like the ending with Emily breaking up in chapter 5 was because like that relationship like burned too bright too fast or something like that. And like it burns real hot early on, and then versus like Evelyn's, which was a more, I think, drawn out, a slower burn kind of relationship. So yeah, I think those were kind of a lot of the big key differences of this chunk of the game.
I'm really interested too in that where, like you kind of alluded to it, that I think it'd be really genius of Kyle, and it's kind of the vibe I got from the minute you said, like, I think it might be this conversation with Jeff or Steve, where the good ending is not necessarily good, but you have to kind of be a little devious, right, to get the good ending. Whereas if you just play it as like a just good dude who trusts his girlfriend, you're gonna not end up with her, right? So you can either be like a good guy who doesn't necessarily get the girl, or you can be kind of a more of like a shadier guy, just a little bit, and get the girl. And it's like which is like more worth it for you, kind of thing. Yeah. I would love if that, like, the only way to end up with her is to do like some sort of like sneaky shit like that. Like there's no other way to end up with the girl, and like that I think would be really interesting in terms of like how worth it is it for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, you're just retaliating. Like, you're not the one that started it with this nefarious, devious stuff.
See, that's total like, like it's still like you still did the thing, right?
You did the thing,
like,
but you did it out of like preservation for your relationship. This guy was this guy, as Trevor so eloquently put, this guy is horning in, and like he's not staying in his lane. If you're not, if you don't stay in your lane, you get knocked, motherfucker.
The problem with that logic is that like 9 times out of 10, the Jeffrey Steve can just be just be a regular dude, right? And so then if you're just like always fucking Facebook messaging this bro and be like, "What's up, fam?" It's gonna be
as somebody who has just been like just the friend, and like that's all it is. And then somebody else asks like, "Hey, what's going on?" It's like, just friends, man. We're just friends. That's all it is. To the point where like I was friends with this girl, and her boyfriend wasn't threatened, but thought that like I had feelings for her, and like he asked her to like talk to me about it, and she goes, "Hey, like we need to talk," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" And she goes, "So like do you have like feelings?" Or it's like, "Nope, not even a little bit. Like we're friends. That's it. That's all it's ever gonna be. I have zero interest in you whatsoever romantically." Funny enough, I was super into her boyfriend though.
Okay.
that's a good ending.
One of the other key differences I think I had in between sessions. So in my Evelyn session, so in my playthrough with Emily, when Matt is going through his hard times in chapter 3, with Emily, I kept the date plans with Emily.
I also did.
So did I.
But with Evelyn, I was like, "Hey, Matt, I think Matt needs me. Are you okay if I, cancel our date and hang out with him?" And so maybe even that like played some kind of like role in it of like, hey, I'm like, obviously friends are an important thing to us, so I'm going to go like take care of my friend while he's, doing this thing. Can we hang out again tomorrow or something like that? And she was totally understanding of as I'm sure Emily would have been as well. But that was another like key difference that I made between the two sessions, because that was one of those things I definitely thought was going to come back to haunt me in the Emily playthrough. Yeah. Because like we had all said in the survey, like, oh, good friends are the most important thing. And so when I had in the Emily playthrough, like we all, I imagine so, yeah. So like when we all chose Emily over over our hurting friend or whatever, or I don't know if you guys did as well, but like it's definitely I did, and I was like, oh man, that's gonna hurt me. That's gonna.
I did, but I made plans for the next night to hang out with Jeff. Because I was like,
Matt.
Hey, or with Matt, yeah, sorry. I'm like, hey, I was like, hey, like I already have plans with Emily tonight, but hey, tomorrow night, are you free? And he goes, yeah, I'm free tomorrow. And I was like, all right, cool. Tomorrow is you and me time. That's it. And I set up really good foundations and boundaries for what is my relationship with Emily versus what my relationship is with Matt, and like made that distinction. But now that you say that, I might have made a mistake.
So I don't even think it's that much for me as much as it was. Yeah, I chose Emily, but like I try to be like Matt, like, yeah, but like anytime, let's do it, right? And then the chapter ends, and like Matt has like his sad boy post, and then like it comes to a close.
And when you hang out with him, his post is basically like, I have the best fucking friends or something like that.
Yeah, and so but then when it goes to chapter 4, if you keep the date with Emily, and it's like you and Emily are doing great, and you and Matt understood, right? And you and him are still bros, basically. I was like, oh, so like to me it reads like if you hadn't handled the Matt situation well, you guys could have like stopped being friends or something, or like gotten more distant after that, because it was like you guys are still like tight or whatever.
Yeah, there's still photos of you guys like broing around and hanging out.
So. Yeah, so like and so I definitely think that if you pick Emily or Evelyn and then don't handle it well with Matt, right, or like don't back up Matt that much, right, in that breakup chapter, he can react negatively, right? Like he can be like, all right, cool, like you weren't really there for me, we're not really friends.
Oh, I have a question to ask you
and
guys.
that can be the example of that.
Let's when we wrap this up, let's put a pin in my thought here. But I want to ask you guys a question about Kelly and Matt's breakup in just a moment. Do we have anything else we want to say about this moment, chapter 3?
I think we can do Kelly and Matt's breakup.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
How did you guys think Matt was going to break up with Kelly? Because I did.
I think the game steers you in that direction. Yeah.
Like I was like, Matt, I do not know why you show up in the hot dog costume, Matt. You are my friend, but you are being a bad boyfriend, and I don't know how to feel about this, because I feel like my perception of who Kelly was ended up being totally wrong. I thought Kelly was this like cool like indie photographer girl who's like doing that, and nope, turns out that she is like 100% like daddy bought her the camera. She's going to like a fancy like photography program, and I say this because she ended the conversation that I had with her with Chow.
Oh,
Chow?
good
Disgusting.
fucking God! You're reading way too much shit into this.
Yeah,
I can't even take you
fucking
seriously
disgusting.
when you pull this shit, Cameron.
Fucking disgusting.
That's all fine. I think for me, I think the game pretty deliberately steers in the direction of like Matt is gonna break up with her. Matt's not a good boyfriend. Like,
yeah,
he's forgetful. He doesn't
flirting
care.
with other people. Yeah,
he's flirting with Evelyn, right? Because in my Emily playthrough, like Evelyn brings up like Matt was kind of flirting with me. Like you might want to just like keep an eye on him and Emily.
Emily says the same thing if you're with Evelyn.
Yeah, and I'm like, I think it got brought up after the breakup where I was like, because I think you get the option to tell Emily that immediately, and I didn't. But like in chapter 3 when they broke up, I was like, I don't know, like I've heard from people, and I didn't say Evelyn, I just said from people that like he might be into you kind of thing, and she was like, oh wow, like that's gross. And so I was like, okay.
I did not want to exacerbate their
and so I was like, okay, great. And so then when I found out I was actually like Kelly broke up with him, I was like, actually, and I came back immediately and was like, actually, like shit, you broke up with him. That's on me. Like the rumors I heard weren't true, which I thought was a really cool, like clever way of getting like high school rumors, not necessarily always accurate. But yeah, like I think the game makes you think it's gonna be Matt breaking up with Kelly, and I thought it was really cool that it was Kelly breaking up with him. And as Trevor's alluded to already, that it was like a really nice, like foreshadowing, full circle thing of like where you and Emily or Evelyn theoretically are like headed towards if you don't presumably do one or two things differently, right? Like, and that's the thing for me. Like, it was really interesting the breakup chapter, just like seeing Matt, I think, for the first time in a new light, right? Like, because before that it was like, oh, Matt's like a bro, but he's like not like he's not like the best bro. He's just like a dude in like my friend group. I feel like. Because like like I have lots of Matt friends who are like we're bros, we like hang out, but like I didn't feel like we were like super close necessarily, and he felt very like frat bro-y kind of guy to me, and I was like, all right, cool, fine, like I like him, he's cool enough, whatever. But like when Evelyn was like, he came on to me, I was like, I believe this information in front of me, yeah.
I did not.
And so,
I was like, I don't know about that.
No, I was like, that checks out for like the Matt I have in my head.
Yeah,
canon.
no.
And so
I was
then
like,
we
I'm
get
like,
to chapter
I don't know
3.
if Matt would do that though, like. And then she says, okay, and then all of a sudden, like, then the hot dog costume incident happens. I was like, oh,
yeah.
Matt,
yeah, and so
bitch.
that's why when the hot dog incident, like, I saw those pictures, like, that fucking checks out. Like, that he's a fucking idiot. He's just, like, a bro-y guy. And so then when chapter 3 happens, and it wasn't, and he's, like, he's got way more layers and emotions to him than I thought. I was like, oh, shit, like, Matt's, like, an actual, like, he's an actual, like, friend, like, potentially, like, best friend kind of guy that has, like, way more depth to him than I realized. And was like his sad boy energy to him in that chapter. And so I think after chapter 3, I was way closer to Matt than I was beforehand, right? So when chapter 4 happened and he was like, hey, like, here's like this crazy thing about like Emily and Jeff or whatever, I was like, I think you're just kind of being like a Matt here, but like I'll hear you out and like I'll do your dumb plan even though I don't want to, right?
Yeah, I did.
But like I'll entertain you kind of thing, right? And so then it does get to chapter 5 and me and Emily break up, and I'm talking to Matt again. I think he just like demonstrated so much more depth to him, and like so much more, not like like wisdom, I guess is the right word.
Well, just maturity
in our conversations. Yeah, maturity, right? Where I was like, oh shit,
so
like throughout the entire game, it very much felt like I was the big brother and Matt was like the little brother, almost like that kind of friendship dynamic. And then at the end, he like all of a sudden is like, actually, like I have like I got some knowledge to drop on you. And like I really appreciated Matt and like that in those moments to be like, wow, like he is like, and I've talked to this to Kyle a little bit where I was like, Matt was the character that I found myself most interested in by the time the like credits rolled. Where I was like, his arc and his journey and his growth and his dynamic with like every other character, because he really does stir the pot on like so many of the conversations you're gonna have, right? Like chapter 4's big drama is because of Matt, right? And then like chapter 3's drama of like him and Kelly breaking up is obviously because of Matt, right? And like he's the one who steers you towards picking Emily and Evelyn. Like you have to choose whose party you're going to go to, right? And his whole arc I found really interesting.
He'll be your wingman at the Halloween party if you don't
already
end up in the relationship with them.
Exactly. And then at chapter 5, he's there if it doesn't work, obviously, but like he's there at the end to be like let's like chat, right? Let's give you like let me just be a bro for you, right?
Let's get some
And
closure,
so,
brother.
yeah, like his whole arc I found really interesting and was the one for me that kind of ultimately stood out, right? Like a big part for Emily's Way 3, and this is like less like about, I guess, Matt, and now we're moving on to like a summary of the whole game, like wrap up thing, is that like I think one of the smartest things and the things I like the most about it is the fact that this is not a game about Emily or Evelyn, if you get it right. Like, it's not a game about either one of these two women. It is a game about like the whole friend group and your whole kind of like, I think, just journey through your last year of college, of high school, right? Like, it is very pointedly, again, I still think not intro or outroed by them. It is so many of the moments you have, so many of the conversations you have are with characters who aren't the girl you're trying to chase. And I think Matt kind of really is strengthened by that and kind of is that rod that runs through it. And so, like, that's what makes it crazy to be like, man, like, there is probably a playthrough where, like, shit doesn't go great in Chapter 3, and he just isn't there really in 4 or 5, where he's, like, such a big presence for mine playthrough that, like, this game just being about relationships in general, right, and friendships in general, like, those groups and dynamics, right, and, like, the big theme for me is the fact that, like, especially in my playthrough, where it is that thing of, you know, your high school experience is so much more than just like the girl you're chasing, right? Like when I think back in high school, the girl that I was like interested in, whatever, at any given moment, is like such a small percentage of it, and it is mainly just like me and my dumb friends who are a lot of Matts, just being stupid together, right? And like being dumb, right? And like playing games and like doing all the like idiotic stuff we did because we're just dumb kids, and like that defines it so much more than this like one girl, right? And so I thought it was interesting that that is kind of the arc of the game itself, right? Like I talked about in Emily's Way 2 how the bad ending feels like that is the canon end to that game almost. Like that feels like that's how that game should end, is the bad ending in some ways to me. And for sure in Emily's Way 3, like the bad end, especially hearing how Trevor had to get his ending, like the quote unquote bad end, like ending where you guys don't end up together, that feels more real to like the larger story the game is telling you of like there's more to this than just the girl, right? And especially with those conversations with Matt, and then going to, in my case, Evelyn's party, right? And like having the like chapter breakdown at the end where it has like the status update post and like the pictures, and it's like, yeah, like see, your character does survive, right? Like he does do fine, right? Like I like the fact, to go back to like that non-spoiler preview I gave, of like the fact that the game gives you closure and shows you that like you're gonna be okay after this breakup, right? Like you're gonna be all right. Like it's gonna suck, but like your life was more than just this, and this game was more than just that. And I thought that was something that I was really drawn to from sort of the beginning, honestly.
It's fun, especially like now. I mean, talking about it with you guys, but then like it was also weird playing it in a vacuum.
I'm sure, yeah.
Because as I've touched on with you, Logan, a little bit. When Chapter 3 rolls around and Kelly basically sends this new profile that Matt has created, I totally thought I was getting catfished. Mm-hmm. I totally thought Kelly has created this profile and I'm supposed to friend it and talk to him, but it's really going to be Kelly, you know, driving the ship there, trying to
get info, get
some juice on Matt to like justify why they broke up or whatever.
Weird.
And it wasn't until I'm like, it like, I now in retrospect can see that, oh, it was setting up the payoff of you logging in as Matt and then Matt being able to still talk to you through his old account. But like, yeah, I was definitely like, I was very conscious of what I was saying to that Matt because I didn't know if that was really Matt or not. Because like, like everything had been set up to suggest like, hey, this could be really Matt, or it could be something completely different. Like this Matt weird. Didn't send me a friend request, so like
how does that work, man? Like I felt weird about that as well.
Yeah.
Not to the point where I thought it was being catfished, but definitely to the point where I was like, why didn't Matt send me a friend request? Like
he's just burning it all down. He's like, I start new. I'm a new man.
But it's like, I was actually, I don't recall if I made comments about this. I'll have to review it when I do the edit for episode 3 of my Let's Play, but I felt like I was like, why didn't you like reach out to me, man? And it's like he eventually is just like, you know, because like, and we have this real deep heart to heart where it's just like we just talk about it. We just talk stuff out, and like I console him, and then he says, yeah, he goes, I just like like what are you doing? And I was like, I have a date with Emily, man. And he goes, it's so cool that you guys are like together. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And I'm like, and we talk a bit. And he goes, yeah, did I do anything wrong? And it's like, no, because you have the option to be like, hey, heard you've been flirting with other girls, that might have like contributed to it, but I didn't make that choice. I was like, I just think that because it's definitely by that time, by chapter 3, I had realized that like the fun, like being fun and like not serious in your flirtatiousness with your friends. Thinking that that's like an agreed upon language of humor among you, can, like, I've seen that happen time and time again where like that backfires in a really bad way.
Yeah.
And like obviously like the impression that Evelyn or Emily was getting when they say I felt like Matt was hitting on me definitely plays into that question. Like Logan and I came to very different conclusions about the kind of person Matt was in regards to it. Logan was like, well, yeah, I
Call
believe
a spade
it.
a spade.
Yeah, he's like, I believe it. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's like
I don't.
And I had no
believe
reason
it.
I had no reason not to believe the girls here. That was like another big part of like they have no reason
But
to make this up, right? It's like I believe.
And that's the thing. I didn't say that she was lying. I was just like, I think that there might have been a miscommunication because I'd also seen that Matt was like doing the panty gift.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I also know from the first moment he goes, dude, I need you to settle an argument. Is this not like the greatest song ever? And it is. He's right. Like, I bonded with Matt immediately on that level that I'm like, I don't think Matt would, like, my feelings are, I did not feel like Matt would have stepped out of his relationship, even if he was, like it was burning down around him.
Yeah, we get such different reactions out of Matt. It's so interesting to me. Yeah.
And
I mean,
it might
so
be,
yeah,
I had a very, very close friend in high school who was, like, very much like that, like very like goofy flirtatious, but when he was in a relationship, he was always super serious about his relationship. So I guess in that, like, thinking about him now, like looking back on it, like that definitely probably influenced me on some level, because when I see like goofy flirtatious people kind of like being that way, I don't immediately think of them as like somebody who would step out of their relationship. So.
Yeah, so in my Evelyn run, I kind of like again, it's not like confrontation with him about it, but it like both with him and with Evelyn, I kind of like broached the idea of like, hey, like it seems like Matt was flirting with you, and with Matt it was like, hey, it seems like you're flirting with the girls, and I've heard things and that kind of stuff, and he owns up and he's like, I guess I'm over familiar with, I should work on that kind of, I think is where his takeaway. So he didn't take it like in a, I mean, I'm sure there is a route where you could take it in a more like, hey, don't fucking do that, man. But like he was self-aware enough to realize how his jokes could have been misconstrued. And so it then later set up the, like, when Jeff or Steve, in the Evelyn case, and Steve, when it set up with that, Evelyn even kind of came at me and was like, hey, like, we talked about this with Matt. Like, Matt wasn't really flirting with me. And so I don't think Steve is really flirting with me either. And I basically got, like, I kind of threw it back of, like, I know Matt. I don't know Steve. So I can't be with you on that sentence, or that sentiment. So that might have been another thing that kind of like all sprinkles into to lead to that ultimate thing. Because but that is like it's interesting enough because that's one of the like bullet point like things at the end that
interesting
that you get is like did you tell so and so the rumors about Matt, and then talking to Steve or Jeff or whatever. So it was just like it was another interesting little like wrinkle in, I think, that dynamic that like really for me kind of throughout the Evelyn run, I was making like the big key decisions differently than I did in my Emily run. With the exception of, I think, really, like, Chapter 2 is probably where I played it, like, most similar to the Emily run. And that's also where I noticed, really, the most copy-paste in the writing, because the conversation I'm having with Emily or with Evelyn was pretty much verbatim the conversation I had with Emily earlier on. Like, even when you're going through the survey and they talk about like this formative experience, in both cases it was stargazing, and like the song was different between the two, but that was really just because I like picked a song in one, I think, and didn't in the other. Because with Emily it was like, yeah, Nickelback, and with Evelyn it was Fall Out Boy, and it was because I had picked Fall Out Boy. I was like, let me guess, and then it gives you like choices for like Avril Lavigne, Fall Out Boy, and one other band or whatever. And I was like, Fall Out Boy, that seems angsty. And she was like, oh my god, yes.
The default for Emily is Nickelback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's. I remember being like, Nickelback is great. Like I also like Nickelback. It's fine.
Dodged a bullet. That's what I did.
Which one?
The breakup
He said he
with
dodged a
Emily.
bullet.
Dodged a bullet. She's a Nickelback fan.
2008.
Yeah, which was worse then.
I mean,
it's more forgivable now.
You are lying to yourself if Photograph or Hero come on and you're not bopping to that. So, you know, it's just because it's cool to hate on Nickelback doesn't mean Nickelback actually sucks.
I have a lightly traumatic experience with the song Hero, and I did not like Photograph.
I guarantee you don't really. This is the same thing. You put way too much shit into this.
No,
like,
this
like
is
reading
actually,
as much as you did into Chow.
No, this is actually like an
Yeah,
actual
stop
thing
it.
that like I don't like that song because of a very very bad experience with a member of my family in regards to that song.
But
so,
but yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it is interesting. Games were good. Good game is good, guys.
Yeah. Any other character beats or moments anybody wants to? So, like, did we all do like the couples costume stuff in the Halloween party?
In mine, we each dressed up as Tinkerbell.
So did I. Yep, same here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I was Peter
Because
Pan
it
in
has,
mine.
it has the option to be
yeah.
like, well, what should like who else is like Tinkerbell, whatever. And I was like, Tinkerbell. And I thought they would like laugh and then like pivot to be like, oh, how about Peter Pan? But she was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, fuck yeah, okay.
100%
I'll be Tinkerbell.
double Tinkerbelled. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I
was
hard on that choice.
I was Peter Pan, and then Evelyn goes as the Corpse Bride, and so I went as the Corpse Groom for that one.
Can you go as the
that's good.
Corpse Bride too?
Probably. I mean, it seems like it. Yeah.
Awesome. So
It's
excited.
really funny.
Trying to think any other moments or things you want to, because one of the other things I want to touch on just real quick is like the quote unquote secrets, but I think I'm of us probably the one that has like delved into those the most.
With like the different
So-
like profile picture icons and stuff.
So yeah, if you go into like in between chapters on the left side of the feed, it'll be like, you know, view secrets or whatever, and it basically brings up like a keyword search term thing, and you can type in you know, searches, and there's some, like if you type in Game Over Greggy, it pulls up a Greg Miller avatar. It says like, we're kind of funny motherfuckers, and basically you can, you know, use Greg as your avatar, because obviously he was such a, as we already touched on, he's, you know, such an avid supporter of Kyle and the series. But then you can also get like the one that Kyle had like tweeted out a couple weeks ago is like, if you type in dog there, you can get like a can you pet the dog mini game or whatever,
Yes,
and it's a
did
little
that,
Shih
played
Tzu
that.
that'll come up and you can like tap it and it'll pet, and you'll get like achievement for that. But then there's other things like you can type in EGN and you'll get like a 2008 era IGN looking website that has I think it's, I don't remember what the song is, but it's Greg, I think in SingStar or something, like doing a video, like it's one of those like iconic IGN videos of the era of him just singing to a song while somebody's playing like, you know, the Guitar Hero guitar or something next to him. And then it's got a whole bunch of like 2008 era IGN references and stuff. There's like a Post Secrets kind of like spin-off website. There's like a Reddit spin-off site kind of thing. There's a Farmville spin-off game that you can, you know, go in and play called
Yeah, I knew
Carrotville.
that.
Yo, I gotta check that out.
It's a
They had
fun,
like
fun
I
dumb
think
little
Carrot
thing.
was one like they had like on the side during like one of the
Yeah.
chapters like posts as well.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just like a lot of fun little dumb things like that. Touch on the music. Did you guys spend any obviously, like Cam, I imagine you
Yeah, no,
didn't
couldn't.
because you were trying to like avoid DMCA
Yeah,
stuff.
that was kind of that was
So-
kind of my struggle. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I didn't delve too deep into music, unfortunately.
Yeah. So Logan, how about you? What did you kind of let the playlists play?
It's interesting. This is probably the one that I spent. I mean, I guess Emily's Away, the first one, doesn't have like too much, I think, music you can do in comparison to the other two. I definitely spent less time with music than I did in Emily's Away 2. This one, because I think it felt less natural. Like, I wouldn't have music playing while I was on Facebook in the same way, where like I would just have
okay.
it on the background while like doing like AIM or like a MySpace kind of thing, where it was like much more like ingrained to do. So I would like to listen to like the songs and then be like, all right, great, fine. For me, the biggest thing was just like the nostalgia hits of it, right? Like when it is like, I think it's the greatest song of all time. You like click on it and it's like, I legit haven't thought about this since 2008. Holy shit. Like it was just me being like, oh my God, like I haven't thought about this since high school. And it would just being like such a weird visceral thing. So it was more for like those, you know, they would share certain tracks and it's like, oh my God. But otherwise, like, no, like I didn't spend too much time. The only one that I kind of vibed with for a little bit for like a chunk of the chapter was Emily sent me like, I can't remember the song, but then she also sent me like the like rain background music to listen to as well.
Yeah.
And
that
like I
was
had
awesome.
that,
was
and
lit.
that I think made sense. But otherwise, I was like, I didn't. And then like it felt like it became less of a thing too, right? Like by like chapters like 4, maybe even 3, like I feel like we were like doing music stuff less. Like once you were with Emily, to me, it felt like it was becoming less and less of a thing that we were still like sharing back and forth.
I mean, it was actually one of those weird little things where I was like, it played into the, oh, this other person is maybe more of a threat
Yep.
because
Yeah.
they were
Music
getting into the
stuff,
music that person liked. And so, yeah, like, oh, suddenly Emily's talking about electronic music instead of indie music and sending an electronic playlist. And she'll send it to you and she'll be like, do you want to listen to this or do you want to, play the indie playlist or whatever? I was like, no, I'm fine listening to this or whatever. And it's the same with Evelyn. It's Evelyn will go from like, hip hop to
Punk rock to
punk
hip
or
hop.
vice versa or something
Yeah.
like that.
She goes from well,
and,
not even- yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say you're right. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah. And so it was like that. So for me, especially in my Evelyn run, I was listening to the music a ton, and there were definitely moments where I was like, it was definitely a flashback in time. In particular, I was because I don't know if it was in any of the playlists in particular, but like one of the like, hey, related videos or something you could do. Obviously, like Beyonce Single Ladies is up there, but Katy Perry's "I Kissed a Girl and I Liked It." I remember, like, I distinctly remember being in my car in Santa Fe when I worked the Santa Fe Opera the summer of 2008 and hearing that song and hearing Katy Perry come up and being very confused because a girl I went to high school with was Katy Perry, she was like Katy something else in high school, but like had seen through Facebook that she'd married and her name at the time was Katy Perry, and I was like, do I know this? Is this the person I know? This is very weird. Like she I don't think she was that great of a singer or whatever. So like I was very, very like baffled and confused, and it took me a little while to realize it wasn't the same person. But like when that song comes up, I am immediately like, yep, this is absolutely 2008. Or like I did the same thing that I did a number of years ago where like I would put on Kanye Stronger
Oh yeah,
because
classic.
I love the Daft Punkness of it, and it was like before I realized or knew like who Daft Punk was.
Daft
I think.
Punk was,
So
for
like
sure,
I
agreed.
knew them from that song. So I just kind of like let that song play, and then I would like go and hit replay on it and let it kind of start going again, stuff like that. So there were definitely some moments like that, and then you can go in and watch like little meme videos, or you can watch like Michael Scott doing the no scream that is now gift like crazy on Twitter and stuff like that. But just seeing some of those, or the we talked about this, or I talked with this with Cameron before he before you joined the call, Logan. Like he incorporated in the "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" like conspiracy theory Pepe something meme into his first playthrough of or his first video, and you can watch like that scene as one of the YouTube videos. And there were just a lot of like, it was interesting seeing a lot of songs that I recognize and then a lot of songs that I don't, because
Sure, yeah,
absolutely,
for sure.
as I've touched on in a lot of these Emily is Away kind of conversations, I've just never been the music guy. But that was that was another element in the Evelyn playthrough. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm into music, and so like let me just hell yeah, Ti and Lil Wayne and stuff like that, and just be like I'm on a boat is another one that you can
Hell yeah,
throw up
it
there,
is.
and the OK Go treadmill video, I loved just throwing that on and having like a nice little nostalgia trip for that. So yeah, it was definitely an element that. Well, I don't think I was like missing it too much in my initial playthrough when I was trying to like avoid any kind of
Yeah.
like DMCA stuff. It was nice. It was a nice extra element to have playing there. The one thing I will touch on, as you kind of mentioned, is the Moody Rain thing, where it's like, yeah, play this song, and here this will be super romantic. Play it while you're on this site. I was like, is this a thing people did? This seems weird.
I didn't
Like,
remember
this
it
seems
either,
really
but-
emo and angsty. Of like, here's a website where we're just gonna have like thunderstorm songs play.
I saw a Cal showed that you could just like download that like Sunder like Storm playlist just like by itself, and then like he had each character had like their own curated like YouTube playlist that you could check out as well. But no, yeah, the music didn't
to
I
answer your
think hit
question,
me the
Trevor,
same.
yes, those websites did exist, and yes, I frequently visited them.
There you go.
All right. Any closing thoughts? Any final sentiments we want to leave on? For
Cam, you want to go first?
I will go first, yeah. And for once, I will be brief. If you have gone through all this podcast, I cannot emphasize this enough to you. Buy this game, play this series. It is so worth it. I cannot emphasize that enough. You've heard me go on diatribes about that. Play this game. There you go.
Okay, Logan.
I will say that if you've gotten through this entire podcast and haven't played the game yet, a lot of spoilers. You shouldn't have done that. That was bad of you. But I will also say that no, I mean I think Emily's Away 3 is a really beautiful game. I think it got me less emotional than Emily's Way 2 did. I think that one and its kind of allure of a good ending drove me on so much that when I did briefly, date Emily and then it ended, it hurt much more. And I think that one ending hurt more. Whereas this one and the way it's paced and the fact that it's not a game about trying to, quote unquote, get the girl. It's about being in a relationship with her for a long time, right? It is more adult in that, I think, aspect of it, right? And getting to grow. I think being in a relationship myself now while playing through the game. And then I think the fact that its ending is one that isn't, a soap opera. It isn't overly dramatic. It is just one where it's two people kind of coming together and being like, is this still working for both of us? And if it's not working for you, what can we do to maybe try to fix that? And if you think there's nothing that we can do, then maybe, just kind of winding this down a little bit, right? Like bringing it to a close. I thought was really emotionally mature. I think it's whip smart. I think it's really clever. I think it's really funny. And I think it is, like I've kind of referenced before, kind of the definitive edition of what an Emily's Way game can be and can kind of aspire to, and really clever, and how the red herring of this game is you and Emily or Evelyn's relationship, when in actuality it's a game about way more than just that, and showing you, I think, just how much more your high school life was about than just trying to get the girl. And also maybe about being the fact that like maybe that girl wasn't the girl you thought she was all these years later too, and kind of giving you like an interesting reminder of like maybe why it didn't work. I think it's a really neat video game.
So a couple things that as you're just talking about, I really wanted to actually circle back and touch on real quick. Prom. Did you guys go to prom or did you ditch?
Ditched.
I went to prom.
I went to prom with Emily. I ditched with Evelyn. So
I found out that after like poking and prodding her enough that like I was like, I get the feeling that like you keep on being like, we could go to prom or ditch. I was like, sounds like you want to ditch. Let's ditch prom. And we had a great time in the woods. We ate s'mores. I got to meet Yef and Jeff. I got to meet him.
Oh, okay.
There, because that's in chapter 4.
yeah,
And yeah, like we had a great time.
cool. And then just one other thing I want to touch before I kind of do my wrap up summation is I loved that, and I've talked with Logan about this, that this is the first game in the Emily is Away series that you get to see what happens in between chapters, or you get to see something of what happens in between chapters via the news feed updates that happen when you wrap up a chapter. You get to see like, oh, okay, here's how things played out, and here's, you know, where this story thread went, and here's where this story thread went. Because that was one of the things I always felt like very awkward, like much more noticeable in the first game, where it's like a year has happened between all these things. It's like a lot happens in a year. I have no idea like what other conversations we've had in that time or whatever.
Yep.
But even in Emily is Away 2, it was still like, okay, like have we not talked for 3 months, or like what's like, so getting that those little drip feeds of like, okay, here's what else is happening on these people. And then even like engaging with people like in between, or like in chapters where you're not really talking to them, but you can still go to their profile and see what's going on. Like when I was with Evelyn, in chapter 5, I just like went and looked up Emily, since I hadn't talked to her in like a few chapters, and she's in a relationship with Jeff in chapter 5 of that one. Versus like, I think when I talked with Emily, or when I was with Emily in chapter 5, like Evelyn was single or something like that. Like she like,
oh really?
She had not.
For me, she was in a relationship.
For me, yeah,
Oh,
she was in a relationship with Steve. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
she might. Well, so there's another thing. Like, I don't, and I like now looking back on it, because I had a different ending with Emily. When I my ending with Evelyn, when I got invited to the, or my ending with Emily, when I got invited to Evelyn's party, I got a very strong vibe that Evelyn and Kelly had like gotten together.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't know if that was me reading too much into it, because Kelly very much like calls whichever girl you're not with like their wifey a lot and stuff.
That happens either way.
But like it didn't happen in my Evelyn ending. Like Kelly and Emily were not like in pictures, you know, flirting and stuff. It was like Kelly had a lot of like solo shots kind of thing, but she had a lot of shots with Evelyn when I was with Emily. So like and again, I don't know like if this was supported, if I was reading too much into it, but like my first ending, I was like, oh, like Kelly changed because she wasn't interested in guys anymore, or what, like whatever the scenario was there, she was more interested in Evelyn. That's a really cool way to like end that thread and kind of like pay off the like there's nothing Matt could have done to like change things there. So yeah, I don't know if that was like if that's
no, cool.
really what was there.
That might have been happening in your playthrough. I don't know.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
I know in my playthrough she was with Steve, and so there were like a bunch of pictures of her, like a ton of pictures of her and Kelly, like Evelyn and Kelly hanging out, and calling each other wifey. But then there were also like a bunch of photos where Steve was there. And
I had her with a bunch of photos of Steve. Even the pictures of her and Kelly, I feel like I didn't have that many of. I just had ones of her and Steve.
I had both. Like there were a ton. There were actually, let me rephrase that. There were only like a handful, like a small, like maybe 3 or 4 thick photos of her with Steve. Most of them were her with Kelly. So.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I look forward to sitting down and playing the game some more or something, and trying to like dive in and figure out what's going on there.
Piece that together.
But yeah, ultimately, like I mean, my ultimate takeaway on this is I think this is a great kind of culmination of this kind of choose your own adventure storytelling that Kyle's really been working on. I think it does it is especially great as a payoff to the series if you've played the other games, because it definitely gives you a lot of those like same touchstones in setting things up of like, hey, let's let's kind of like build out your character, and like, do you like reading, and what kind of books, or do you like movies, and what kind of movies, and those kinds of things. But then that like quickly fades away into the more interpersonal dynamics, like you've touched on, Logan. Like, this game is much more about being in the relationship than the chase that we've been in games past, and then outside of that, it is much more about this group of friends and the interpersonal dynamics across everyone, as opposed to just the one person. It's fascinating that, like, the first person you meet isn't Emily or Evelyn. It's Matt. That's like who's engaging with you and helping you get the setup. And he can also be one of the last people you have the meet with. But again, not always. So it's definitely an interesting dynamic on that front. But I think it's fascinating seeing people come and go in this story, in the way that the hecticness of high school senior year saw people kind of come and go from the the forefront of maybe your friend group and stuff like that. Or when you are in a relationship, everybody else kind of falls by the wayside, and that's why you're not having those conversations. I'm guessing we all like encouraged Emily and Evelyn to like make up and become friends again.
Oh yeah, that's a big plot point. Yeah, definitely.
Same. And I did that in both.
It didn't
runs.
really feel like they got like super close again, but like
they patched up their friendships.
Somewhat.
That's what, like, they patched up the friendship, and that's what matters. Even if they don't become super close again, settling like burying that hatchet between the two of them was super important. I feel like in both people's I should say both characters, they're fictional, both characters like story arcs. Like, it's important that whatever was the problem that led up to this point, like, it can end, because the problem, the person who's the problem is Travis, and Travis is gone now. So
it was interesting.
In Evelyn's playthrough, is it Emily's ex-boyfriend?
No, so it's all related to Travis, but in the Emily playthrough, it is Emily like gave an ultimatum, right? Where she was like, it's like, hey, I don't think he's good for you, so it's got to be him or me. In the Evelyn playthrough, Evelyn just becomes distant. Like, Emily didn't do an us or them. She deliberately chose Travis and just kind of like stopped hanging out with Emily, and Emily got hurt by that. That like because I was very much expecting it to be like Evelyn say, and then she said like him or me or whatever. And when that didn't come up, I was like, oh, okay, that's a interesting twist on that. That was like I think most people like in looking through kind of the stats pages, like if you are on the Emily path, it's saying like you and 52% encouraged Emily to befriend Evelyn again, and then on my Evelyn path, it's you and 44% encouraged Evelyn to befriend Emily again. So that's 96% of us players want them to like end up friends, and then there's another 4% of people out there that are like, fuck them. So those monsters. But even that, like, I would be curious to see how that like shifts the dynamic moving forward. Because like at the end in my Evelyn run, Emily was like, hey, like, it'd be really cool like if both you guys came to the party, like, come and have fun, one last send off for everybody. Also, I assume you guys put like your actual birthdays in. Did you get gifts, in between whatever seasons or whatever? Yep.
So I don't think I did. Me and Emily had the exact same birthday.
Ah, okay.
Her birthday is January 3rd,
and
my birthday is January 3rd. So when it happened, she was getting a bunch of shit, and nobody said anything about mine. And so it was that thing of like, when we got there, I was like, oh shit, like, because you see early on, like, her birthday is January 3rd, I was like, oh fuck, and then, like, in my mind, I was like, is it always set to the player? So it's interesting to hear that it's not always set to the player. I just happen to have the same birthday, and so I didn't get Jack on my birthday. They didn't even mention my birthday at all. They just went over it.
So like my birthday, March 19th, was like right around one of the chapter dates, and so like I think chapter 3 ends or something like that, and then I got like gifts from people going in chapter, which also even like the Facebook gifts I had completely forgotten was a thing, and so like when those things popped up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember these weird little nuggets. But yeah, that's fascinating. And then also, I'm very curious how it works out well with other people. But like for me, both of my like couple names actually worked out pretty well. I got like Tremoli or Trevelin were my like for Trevor and the other people. So I don't know if like locally or
Yeah.
or how if that would work out well. But like
Yeah.
me having the E in my name helped out have a celebrity pairing name.
Couple of nickname. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's that is unfortunate that because you had the birthday on Emily's birthday that they're not also awarding. Oh, also, who won the Poke War for you guys?
I won
I
the
won the
Poke War.
Poke War.
Yeah, me too.
I don't.
And
lose
then
Poke
with
Wars.
Evelyn, I was like, I want to see what happens if I don't even bother, and so like I ignore, and then like immediately once you hit ignore, she basically writes on your wall, like, haha, I win, haha, or something like that, as opposed to us winning the Poke
For
War
the
where
entire
it's like,
chapter,
yeah,
you're
you're
just
just
doing a
poking back
yeah.
and forth, and then like finally in between chapters, she's like, all right, you win. Yeah, just lots of little fun things in there. So yeah, solid game all around. I definitely highly recommend, and I appreciate you, Logan, doing the like this is my canon playthrough. Like it's one of those things like I always feel bad like not trying to pursue other paths because like they put as much work into all those other paths as well. Like I don't want to like
Sure.
just not see them through. So and especially seeing like how drastically the story can differ, I guess, between the two paths that I've gotten so far. Really enjoyed that. So yeah, shout out to Kyle Seeley. I look
Yes.
forward to we're planning on sitting down with him for an episode of That News You Care About here in a couple weeks time. Just kind of doing a sit down interview session with him. So stay tuned for that in the future. Yeah, I think that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for joining me to talk all things Emily is Away 3. Let us go
Absolutely.
around our metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give some love to, Cameron?
Yeah, sure. If you want to follow my streams, I stream Monday and Wednesday, usually from 6 p.m. East or Pacific time to 8 p.m. Sometimes later. I also have this awesome Let's Play series where I've been playing through Emily is Away. That'll be we have the first episode up right now. The second episode will go live later this week, and I mean I'm super stoked to have everybody kind of get the opportunity to enjoy this amazing game, and hopefully you'll find some humor and laughter in my playthrough.
Cool. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. Anything you want to give some love to, Logan?
Yeah, you can go check out, speaking of Let's Plays, myself and Trevor have recorded a number of different Let's Plays of our journey through It Takes Two. We recorded more yesterday as of recording this. It's been a merry old time. It's been a lot of fun, so go check all of that out over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. You can also go check out, a week ago, as of recording this, I had the Eastern Conference predictions for the MLS playoff field. Now that the season has started to go live this upcoming week, the Western Conference one is done. It's already all finished up. Just need to finish editing it. And that'll go live. And then, yeah, just stay tuned to all other things over at That Nerdy Site. Oh, check out episode 50 of News You Care About. Me and Trevor had a lot of fun with that. So do that as well.
Cool. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo kind of the Let's Play front. You can see this week, you'll be able to see, I think, part 5 of me and Logan playing through It Takes Two. And then on Thursday, you'll see part 2 of Cameron's Emily is Away Let's Play go up. And then more of both of those series in the near future. At some point down the line, I had recorded, as I said, I think earlier in the episode, I recorded all of my playthrough of Emily is Away 3, my initial Emily 1. So we will eventually probably throw all that up as just kind of like a full playlist, because I basically already have all those up and ready to go, but I figured we'd get Cam's up first before we do any of that. So yeah, you can go keep an eye out on our YouTube youtube.com/thatnerdysite for all that fun stuff, as well as our podcasts and all the normal stuff. If you are a huge fan of the Mighty Ducks, we've been doing a whole bunch of Mighty Ducks stuff on that D Plus show this month. And presumably we'll wrap up with D3, the Mighty Ducks, here this coming week ahead of us. So you can follow everything we do over at That Nerdy Site and check out thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, once again, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, click the notification bell, all those fun things. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's early access episode is me and Logan talking about the TV shows we grew up with. To Logan's point on the that news you care about was the video games we grew up with, a lot of like our childhood gaming memories. So big old nostalgia month for us over here on That Nerdy Site. Between this, Emily is Away, all that fun stuff. So yeah, check out all that good stuff. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.